Hello and welcome to From the North, a Masonic podcast, where three Master Masons and friends get together and talk about lodge life and being better men.
That's our slogan.
That is our slogan. I thought I'd slip that in there.
Proud of you.
Thanks. I am AC Ransom, Master Mason and Senior Steward here at Harmony Lodge number 21.
And I am Gary Roberts. I am the bearer of the stick at Harmony Lodge. They won't let me in to Harmony Lodge. I have to pretend to guard the door.
And then I am Jason Lee, Junior Deacon, and I am also present today.
Very good.
First time for everything. Yes, he is physically present, but mentally not.
Listen, that's true, but that's okay.
And today you're going to learn all about Gary in this one.
Boy, you're in for a short podcast.
A short podcast. You, dear listener, have requested and we have listened.
Yeah, my daughter Kez got to quit making requests.
That's the one view we're getting.
That's the one view.
Oh, man.
It's from my 11-year-old daughter, who is my greatest fan. She hears.
We'll get a complaint on our website or something.
Oh, I forgot we had that.
We haven't got one yet?
No, we have
fix
one.
that.
Okay, so I figured, Jason, it'd be you ask a question, I ask a question, and we'll do our best to kind of swap off, and we know how on topic we stay, so we'll see how this goes, Gary.
Yeah.
Praying for me.
So the question I kind of want to start all of these, is the one I started with Kurt as well, is just like, I would love to just kind of hear like what you do as an occupation, maybe a brief history of what you have done as your occupation, any lessons you've learned from that, things you've taken from that into Masonry. Just kind of, I realize that's not a question, but so much more is like, I just like to know about like what you do for a living.
So, I have had essentially 3 careers in my lifetime. I'm on my 3rd. I am currently a product manager for communication and software products for the company I work for, which means I get to code and play and do what I really like to do, which is tinker with hardware, electronic hardware, which fits really well with my background because I'm a radio amateur, so I play with radios all the time, and they let me do it at work. They let me play for work, which is my dad always told me that you should always find a job that's not work.
Sure.
Otherwise it will become so, and you won't want to go. So I'm currently in my 3rd job, if you will, my 3rd career. I started out of high school or post-mission life working in IT and computers, database administrator, programmer, etc. I really liked what I did. I worked with a great set of people. I was hired very luckily with no college experience, no college degree.
Wow.
Because I was stupid and didn't start college till later in life. I just had a boss that believed in a philosophy that he liked to farm kids that he says knew how to work because they grew up on the farm, not realizing that I hated farming. Absolutely hated it.
So that was your in, but
that was my in. But he also found out I had bought my own computer at the time, and this is back in the 486, 286, 386 era of computers.
I'm going to say I know what that means.
So this is like...
I'm going to say I don't know what that means.
So this is back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
Like floppy disk.
Yeah, floppy disk era.
See,
The last of the floppy disks. The last of the
Okay.
floppy disks. The small ones you could actually put in your back pocket, not the 14, 12-inch ones that you could buy. But he hired me because I was just a farm kid and I was tinkering on my own computer. I had my amateur radio license at the time, and I did my own bulletin board system over the radio. So back in the days, you would have these, before the internet came out, internet was just brand spanking new. You would have these dial-up BBSs that would just give you these terminal screens, and you could pass files back and forth and do little chat messages and things like that. And I had set up my own not having any formal computer training at all.
Dang.
You're one of the
Computers
OG
back in the
nerds,
day
Gary.
cost about $5,000 just for the base part of the computer. So
No wonder he's into Dungeons and Dragons these days.
Yeah,
like
he's-
it's not a surprise. I was surprised when you had said that you do Dungeons and Dragons, but like now I'm like, makes perfect sense. Like it's not surprising.
yeah, we played in high school and middle school. We were supposed to be in this band class at lunch, and we'd play Dungeons and Dragons instead. As kids.
I love how. Maybe this is my own perception, but like, so I was in band in junior high, but the band kids were always like the nerdy kids, and I love how you skipped out on the nerdy thing to go do something even more nerdy.
Yep, that was me. And if you saw some pictures of me in high school, I was the nerd of nerds.
Gasp, now I want to.
I know, right?
I had funky long yeah. So I tried to keep a Mormonish looking haircut, yet hide my long hair from my parents.
What?
Dude, that's what I did growing up. I had it just long enough to be like pushing the edge, but not getting lots of trouble.
Yep. So
Yeah,
I mean, up on top. I mean, this is back in the day when it was business on top, party in the back. You get away with that. I kept the top really nice and tidy. I had a really great relationship with my grandmother who cut my hair every month, and I could always talk her into never touching the back.
You social deviants.
And it went for like 2 or 3 years that way until we went swimming at a family reunion up in Idaho, up at my uncle's house. He has a swimming pool with natural hot water there. He has to cool his water. And it's an old hotel that he converted into a house for him and his son, but it has this huge pool. And we were there swimming, and I come out of the pool, and my mom sees my hair down past my shoulder blades. And that afternoon, I got a new haircut.
See, so the pushing it haircut for me was not a mullet. It was like the Bieber haircut when he was like young. It was kind of like long and kind of like a shag, but not quite.
Uh-huh.
That's what I would push. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what my son's got right now. It's Corona hair.
Corona. It's the Corona. It's the Corona.
He's just like, nobody can see me right now, so I'm just going to let it grow along.
So how did you transition from the nerdy stuff to doing your firefighter time? Because that's what you did before what you're doing now, right?
That was your second career?
Yeah, so my second career was I went full-time fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My first career was being an IT DEA programmer guy.
So
I actually worked in the same department as our junior warden did. I helped hire our junior warden. But I'd been, when I was 16 years old, I started working with the Forest Service on fire camp crews. So when you're 16, 17-year-olds, you can go work at these base camps or the incident camps for these huge wildland fires. And we would go do that and make tons of money during the summer. Things were slowing down at my regular work during the summer, so I'd go do that. And you'd be gone for 21 days, and you'd come back with a $5,000, $6,000 paycheck, which is a 16, 17-year-old kid was
a lot.
Awesome. Absolutely awesome. And so I got hooked on fire, and I had an uncle and an aunt that were both volunteer firefighters. And I would go out with my uncle times and go fight fire with him. And then when I turned 18, I joined the local fire department, which you can still see that station there today. A lot of people pass it up there in Idaho, up in Ovid, Idaho, on the Ovid corner. There's that big lumber yard. As you're going from Paris to Montpelier, that's on that big.
That was your first
turn.
station?
There's a little teeny shed in the back that's got a single fire engine in the back, and that was my first fire station. So I did that, and then when I moved down here, I joined one of the local city fire departments, and they paid for training and things like that. So I got firefighter certifications left and right, and I got to the point where it was like I was an asshole at my full-time employment. I'd done some very selfish things. I was young and dumb, let's put it that way, and quite arrogant. And I got married. I'd started changing what I was, the way I was doing things. I wasn't attending my local congregation. I decided to change things up. I'd get serious about things. Found a girl. We got married, and I was still struggling from some of the repercussions for being young and dumb at work. And I had all these certifications, and So it's time for a career change, do something different.
Sure.
And I started going back to school at the same time. And those certifications actually counted towards college credits.
Oh, that's cool.
So I ran with it. And got a full-time job out in the Uinta Basin as their first full-time fire person. As a fire marshal and chief officer for the Basin District, which that's a whole nother mistake.
Okay.
Because I jumped through the fire ranks too quickly.
Sure.
I didn't start out as a firefighter. I started out as a chief officer. There's a lot of lessons you need to learn as you go up through. It's like Masonry. I mean, we start out as entered apprentices for a reason. We become fellow crafts for a reason. And then master masons. Well, the fire service has the same thing. You start out as a firefighter for a reason, as a probie for a reason, and then you become an engineer operator,
I'm sorry,
lieutenant, and then
a probie.
Chief. A probie, yeah.
A probie?
Probationary firefighter.
Oh, okay.
Probie, boots kind of person. So I never had the probie experience outside that, and there's a lot of lessons you learn about respect for other people and things like that. So I went out there. I was full time out there for a while. My wife hated it out there because it's a rough crowd out in the basin.
Okay.
Because the oil field brings a whole different crowd with it. She wanted to get back here. She's from here, and a chief's position opened up here. I applied for it with some heavy competition and won it because I was the outsider. Even though I had been in the program here before. And that was kind of what was appealing to the county executive, was that I knew about the system, but I hadn't been part of it for the last 2 or 3 years. So I came back here, was fire chief for a long time, and then retired out of that, and then now I'm in my current job. But I learned a lot of lessons through that experience. Sure. Having grown up, I would do it differently. I would have started out a full-time department as a regular firefighter and worked my way up through the ranks instead of going in as a chief officer like I did. There's just a lot of lessons you learn as you work your way up.
I believe it.
Through the things. And I got my butt kicked because I didn't learn those lessons, which has made me a better employee in the current job I am. The president of the company that was there when I first worked in the IT department, I'm now back with that same company, and now I work in marketing. But the president of the company, he questioned the guy that hired me. You really want him back? And the guy that hired me didn't know. And I actually ran into that president. He's our retired president now, but he's like, "You're a different person." And I just go, well, I learned a lot of lessons the hard way towards the end of my fire service career.
Sure.
So that's my jobs.
All right.
That's where I am. That's where I've been. And now I get to hang out with you guys.
It's the journey.
I get my Saturdays back now because I'm not in the fire service anymore.
We're glad you have your Saturdays.
Well, I'm glad you went through that because I've always, I've never seen, I'll be honest with you, I've never seen the connection between being fire chief to your current job. I've never understood that. But now that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, imagine I play with radios on both sides.
Oh, I'm sure you do. All right, your question. Questions to AC.
I asked the last one about...
No, I did. I said, what's your job?
No, and then I asked the question of, so how in the world did you switch to the firefighter stuff?
Oh, but I know you have a question you want to ask.
Well, yes, but that was going to be later when we were on to the masonry stuff.
Okay, so I'll go.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Gary, why did you become a Mason?
Why did I become a Mason?
That was very smooth until you laughed at your own question.
No, but seriously.
So instead of your job career, now it's your Masonic career. So tell us about that.
I've always had an interest in masonry.
What does that mean? I've always had an interest in masonry.
Because of the mysterious aspect of Freemasons.
Okay, so you haven't had family members or anything?
I haven't had any family members that are Masons. Nobody that I've known personally was a Mason. First exposure to it was when I was 19 years old, living in Ocala, Florida. I had a mission companion that was, it's the Masons. And we would drive past the Mason Lodge there, which was fairly sizable in Ocala. They had this beautiful, beautiful neon blue sign out in front of the building. The square and compasses and the G is as tall as me, embedded in cinder block
Ooh.
out
Wow.
in front of their building, and the lot size is about that their Masonic temple is on is just one building in the middle of the block.
Wow.
So kind of like the
Holy
tabernacle
cow,
is,
yeah.
but a smaller building.
That's cool though.
Here in Logan. So I got really interested from some of the things that he started telling me, and then a few transfers later, I was in Jacksonville and met a member of the LDS Church who was a member of the bishopric, and for people who are not LDS, that's just one of the leaders of the local congregation that wore a ring. And I asked him about the ring. He says, I'm a Freemason, but he wouldn't answer a lot of questions about it. I mean, I would ask him questions like, is it compatible with being a member of the LDS Church? And he was like, oh yeah, it's totally compatible. He was also a member. He's the one I was telling you about that would have the grand piano in his house. And, And also his full-time job was playing for the local Baptist church.
Which is super cool.
Playing the organ for the local Baptist church.
He was good. Fun to hear.
He was a great guy. I mean, for a model citizen, you could not find a nicer person ever. He left an impression on me. And then I left. And so I would, over the years, I would hear and I'd renew my interest and go look in and read about it a little bit. And I always wanted to go look and investigate. When I first lived here in Logan and in my single days, I came and visited the lodge. They used to have these Saturday meet and greets. We'd come have donuts with the Masons.
Ooh.
So I popped in at one of those, and
We should do that again just for the donuts.
I think we should too.
Just for the...
And come and talk to him. I think that's the first time I met George Winters.
Mm.
And then I didn't do anything for a while. Got married, left, came back, and then I visited again. And then they were having dinners at Angie's as their meet and greet. So that was a cool thing. And that's
Step up a little bit.
Yeah.
where I met Worshipful Snyder. I wasn't ready to commit yet because I was fully involved in scouting. Family was still pretty young. I was very involved in the LDS Church. I just didn't have the time. And I knew enough about Masonry to know that when I committed, I wanted to be full in. And
Sure.
I wanted to be able to commit the time correctly or not do it at all. And so that's why it took me a while to finally jump on board. And then when I got in, it wasn't anything like I'd been told it was.
So talk about that then. Tell me, what were you told it was, and what was that difference?
So I was told that there was this super secret organization that they had, that it was full of very, very ambitious men.
See, I was told the same thing. Keep going.
That had each other's backs, and that if you became a Mason, that you would become part of the city's elite, the super secret elite.
That might be true some places.
It says Fire Chief Gary Roberts.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And there was all these secrets surrounding it and things like that, and they're super mysterious. But when I came here, it's different than that, better than that.
Define better than that, if you would.
Define better than that?
Yeah.
It's not... In my mind, I had it was wrapped around these egos and being and controlling society kind of deal.
Mm.
And that was what I thought Freemasons did. And it's not that. It's us trying to become better. Everybody meeting on the level regardless of what you do for a living or what your station is in life. Everybody's equal. And they're just trying to become better people instead of trying to make people bow to our will. Which, in my mind, I don't know why that was, but it was always there.
It's part
Dude,
of...
I'm going to become a superstar!
Well, we know what Gary wanted.
You know what? Came for the power, stayed for the donuts. But it's true. It's
That's
part of
almost Kurt's story, too! Taco! Kurt was like,
Taco.
yeah, he's like,
I showed up and there was food! What was it?
And as you can tell, for people who aren't on the podcast, I am about 9 months along and have been for several years. You're retired from the fire service where I had to be physically in shape because of the wildland firefighting requirements,
Well,
where I
sure.
was thin and buff, and then moved to a desk job, and now I've become a well-rounded individual.
Oh,
No, it's
man.
cool. It's cool that you say that because I think that is a very common perception of masonry. And it was definitely my perception coming in. Is I also thought I would see a bunch of ambitious, super ambitious people, and I hate to say it, I was almost disappointed that like
When
they
we're
were
all politicians.
Well, they were
You
just-
me that night.
they were just regular people. I was just like, what is this malarkey?
Yeah, good men from all stations. And
I mean, I didn't know they were good men at the time. They just
Yes,
seemed
dudes.
like these are not ambitious people. So that's interesting. I'm glad we share that. AC, it's your turn though. Did I steal your question?
No.
Okay.
The one question I was going to ask after this, he already answered about, because every Mason I've talked to has a story of how they came to the lodge, investigated, went away for a few years, and then came back and joined. And my question I like to ask people is,
Actually,
what was that difference?
Well,
But you already answered your question of just time mostly.
Right. It was a time commitment, and then also when I came back, I was having a, if you will, a crisis of faith.
Mm-hmm.
I had been studying my religion at that point and had learned some things that had dissuaded me. Plus, the way that they were separating from the BSA hurt me pretty bad because I love the BSA program.
Mhm.
I needed something to fill that ritual part of my life. And also I had been out of the fire service for a while, and when you're in the fire service, there is a brotherhood there because you're in the trenches with each other. You go from sitting in your chair to running 110 miles an hour with your stress level pegged through the roof in a matter of seconds when that pager goes off. And it is very much a feeling like soldiers have out in the field during war. You know,
I've heard that about firefighters, actually.
and you create a bond with your fellow firefighters that is a lifetime bond until you leave the fire service. When you retire, you're kind of put out to pasture, and you don't hear from those guys anymore.
Really?
Sad.
You think that, like...
Different departments handle it differently. It's kind of like lodges handle it differently. But, I mean, some of the big organizations, like in the central part of our state, in the north central part of our state, and I'm saying that with my little fingers because they call themselves Northern Utah, and they're nowhere near Northern Utah, handle their retired firefighters. They're treated just like they're still full-timers, and they call up on each other and all that kind of stuff. Not up here. And also kind of the way that I left, there needed to be that break. But I miss that brotherhood feeling. And having come into Masonry, and I had that hook in with Kurt already, there was a brotherhood and a bond here that I was able to associate with that helps fill that hole.
That's cool. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for when they come into Masonry.
Yeah.
Because again, like you're saying, like you get that experience as like soldiers, you get it to some degree. When I was a missionary out in the field, right? Like if I saw another missionary for whatever reason, like I knew that like they had my back and I had theirs, and like we have like this camaraderie. Even if we don't necessarily like each other, we're still both missionaries. And that's again that kind of carries over into Masonry. Even if you don't have to like each other, but you're both still Masons.
Right.
So that's cool. That's cool.
And I think guys have a more intense need for that bond
I agree.
than the ladies do.
And I think we have a hard time showing it too.
Right.
I think it's traditional that like, and again, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but just I think it's traditional that like a guy should be able to just do everything on his own. Doesn't need anybody. He's perfectly 100%, a million times independent, and like that's just not what human beings are, right? And we need we need each other, and Masonry is a good way to get that camaraderie, to get that needing each other without having to like go fight fires, man. Yeah, I think that's cool.
Yeah, which right now I couldn't do that. Walk 5 cents up the side of a hill and it'd be huffing and puffing.
5 cents?
5 steps.
Oh.
5 cents, I meant to say 5 steps, but my brain and my mouth sometimes don't work together.
That's okay. We have more than 5 human senses, but 5 cents. There you go. That's good.
The problem is Gary's answers are so dynamic. He answers
Like
several
9
questions
questions.
with one answer. Like I was going to ask, well, basically when you were talking about your experience with Masonry, you answered several questions in there that could have been asked.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also more curious about like your journey as a Mason, right? So like when you were talking about your time in the fire, your time with computers and whatnot. You talked about a number of lessons that you had learned from your career, and that's definitely interesting. And I'd love to talk about that more. But specifically, I'd like to know what have you learned as a Mason? Like, what has Masonry actually brought to your life?
How has it changed you?
And if it's not, then that's fine too.
Right. Well,
that's not the answer.
I think though we're accepting all answers.
It's true. It's true.
But don't answer that way.
It is funny that you say that, because as a Mason, I think I have had my eyes open more to being accepting of different views than I ever have in the past. That there is no right side, wrong side to every issue. It's okay, and I don't have to get upset if somebody else doesn't like the exact same things or think the exact same way that I do. I'm actually finding, and I haven't been a Mason maybe a year and a half. I'm about a year and a half.
About.
I'm finding that I'm quite enjoying listening to those differing opinions.
Sure.
That's the one thing that coming to here does, because there's multiple people that come from different lifestyles and different backgrounds, and all of us have a different history, and all of it is rich, and I'm starting to learn and glean from that richness and finding ways that I can absorb that and try to make myself better.
Once different becomes not bad, you learn a lot.
I think that's the big step right there, is that being different is not bad.
I love that your Masonic experience has been learning from people. I love that that's the big takeaway from Masonry, because it really is. That's one of the awesome things about Masonry, is you have so many different diverse people, so many people from... That's why I like my first question being, what job do you have? Because there's such a big background. It just happens that Kurt and Gary have very similar jobs.
Very similar.
But outside of those two,
right.
Everybody's
very diverse.
Of course, the two we pick. But no, it's a lot of different backgrounds, and the fact that that's been the most valuable thing, is learning to look at other people's opinions and experiences and then learn from that, and that's amazing. That's something that I genuinely believe is hard to find in any other organization, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because that's a solid answer.
And I think one of the other things that I really enjoy about Masonry is, as a whole, there's always a push to learn.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go through, and I got my dues card at the beginning of the year. It's the first dues card I've ever had, and I took the opportunity to go to as many lodges as I could, because every degree, every ritual that I went through, I would learn something different. Yeah. I'd have my eyes open to something else. I love having that experience. That's why I love to go into those degrees. And now that we have Corona, this
is about as
this is how I'm getting it now.
This
and
is
I'm
all
being
we
pushed
have.
to go learn. And when I have discussions with you guys, we talked about this a little bit earlier. There are things now that I'm going to go home and I want to look that up. I want to read about that. Mm-hmm. I want to find out more about that.
No, that's super cool. Thank you for that answer. I know you want to keep these in that 30-minute range, and we're pushing up against that. So I just kind of as a closer here, is there anything else that you just want to talk about, or anything that you just want to? You can get on a soapbox if you want and preach. You can
on a soapbox.
Do it. If that's what you want to do. I just kind of want this last thing to be if there's anything else that you just kind of want to talk about, Masonic, maybe not Masonic. Maybe your family, maybe your work, maybe it doesn't matter. I just want to make sure you have that opportunity.
No, the one thing that I'm really appreciative of is my lady, and I love how we use that word. I'm thankful for Worshipful Snyder for sharing that with me his first time. Or he was the first one to share that with me. She has been very accepting of my changes. They're not changes that she's always agreed with, but she has supported my efforts with faith change and what I do now here in Lodge. If she ever hears this, I don't know if she will or not. Just want her to know how much she is appreciated. So, but with that, for those that are wanting to learn about Masonry or thinking about becoming a Mason, If you do it, make sure you get in all the way. Don't
Agreed.
do it half-tushed. Half-tushed.
Gary?
Okay, half-tushed.
Gary, that was a great last answer.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to end
As
it.
always, you answered with nobility and...
Charm.
What was that? I had another word.
Grace.
Didn't
Perhaps.
Aplomb.
Debauchery.
It was a very good answer. Just a very good answer. Nobility and class is the word I was going for. You
that's a
answered with
good one.
nobility and class, and you always do. Thanks for taking... Well, you're always here with us, Gary, but thanks for allowing us to focus on you. I know it's not fun to be on the spotlight.
No, it is the one subject I know a lot about, but...
I mean, yeah.
I'm just happy to have it over with, so I don't have to do anything.
Oh, you think that's the only time we're doing this?
It's Gary episode part 2.
But yeah, thank you, Gary, for willing to kind of submit to our questions here, and thank you to everybody, I should say, for listening, for going with us today as we met a Mason, Gary Roberts. And yeah, we hope to have you around next week. Thanks so much. See you around.
The host of the From the North podcast are providing this podcast as a public service and for their own selfish motives. It is neither a legal interpretation nor a statement of any Grand Lodge, local lodge, or any Masonic body, or Freemasonry in general. Any reference to any specific product, subject, or entity does not constitute an endorsement or a recommendation. The rantings, tomfoolery, and views expressed by the guests and the hosts are their own, and their appearance on the program does not apply any endorsement of them, any Grand or local lodge, or any entity they represent.